I hope you all had a great break, great breakout sessions. Hopefully you got an evaluation on your seats this morning at the first session, or otherwise you can pick some up at the hospitality suite on the second floor, hospitality desk right before the marketplace. If you enter on paper, you get one chance to win a free registration to next year's Worlds of Flavor. If you fill out the evaluation for the conference on the app this afternoon, you get 2 chances to win a free registration. So make sure you take the time to do that. We very much appreciate your feedback. We use that a lot to make each year a little bit better than the last. So that's an important component of the program building for the following year. And then another thing I want to point out to you also and remind you is the whiskey bar and dessert tasting that we will have after the general session this afternoon with whiskey by Suntory and desserts by Janice Wong and Will Goldfarb. So you don't want to miss that either. And at that time, we will do a raffle, and you are entered in the raffle thanks to your registration. That's all you had to do, for a package of registrations to all 3 of our registration-only conferences: Worlds of Flavor next year, Rethink Food in November, and Menus of Change in June. So, but you must be present to win. So you don't want to hear from your friends that we called your name and you were not here. So make sure to still be here at 2:45 for that. And now we are going to talk about Asian cuisines with Western sensibilities. And in order to do that, I welcome back to the podium Francis Lam.
Hello, everyone. This is, and thank you, Anne, for that short and sweet introduction. So my name is Francis, and I'm standing in front of you, and maybe that's all you need to know about me. But today, this is a session I'm really excited to be a part of, because this is something I think a lot about in my work as a writer and as an editor. I think a lot about American cuisine. I think a lot about how American cuisine comes from its influences and what it means to be American, what it says about us. And I think, one of the things I think about a lot of is the fact that in most places of the world, if you ask someone what they want for dinner, they'll say, oh, I feel like a piece of fish tonight, or, how about some chicken? But in America, that answer will just as likely be, oh, I feel like Indian food, or, how about Chinese, or Thai, or Korean, or Italian. And the idea that so many Americans eat internationally as a matter of course is really a fascinating one, right? It's a sign that all these global cuisines, or like how they're represented anyway, and that's maybe a conference unto itself, but all these global cuisines are really a part of our national cuisine. And as we've heard and talked about and maybe thought about throughout this conference, that idea permeates what we all do as cooks and diners and observers of culture. And we, as a culture, shift back and forth between tradition and fusion, right? Between being appreciators and appropriators. And that has its own kind of complications, right? A few years ago, I wrote an article for the New York Times asking why it is that American-born chefs so often become more famous cooking global cuisines than immigrant chefs from those cultures. Right? It's sort of interesting. And I was thinking about people like Andy Ricker of Pok Pok, and Rick Bayless of Frontera Grill, and Alex Stupak of Empellón, who have, respectively become nationally famous chefs for cooking Thai food, Mexican food, and contemporary Mexican food, and they are from Vermont, Oklahoma, and Leominster, Massachusetts, respectively, not born into these cultures at all. I respect all these chefs enormously, and I'm lucky to count at least 2 of the 3 personal friends. The third, I hope to be friends with one day, or maybe we're frenemies, or something. But I wanted to ask questions through this article, and I wanted to ask a couple questions about, why is it that the media really only wants to rely on people who don't have accents, and who gets to tell the stories of these cultures? And who makes customers feel safe when they're out for a culinary adventure at the table? And who has access to investors? And who has access to capital? And who has access to prime commercial real estate? And I was fascinated by the responses article because, you know, some people read it and got really angry. They got really super worked up or super defensive. But it was interesting because people got angry or worked up or defensive from different sides. And some people were like, yeah, it's totally garbage, man. How can you go out and just steal someone's heritage? And other people were like, well, whatever, anyone could cook anything, and you're the very first racist for bringing it up. And so, you know, it turns out that the question of who gets the hook, whose cuisine, is a really tricky one, and a personal one for a lot of people, for cooks and for diners. At the same time, there's no denying that for all the complicated social issues at play, the fact is that America has always been a nation of immigrants. And that American culture and American cuisine has always been influenced by those immigrants and from ideas all around the globe. And as we heard Ken Abala say at the very beginning of this conference, you know, that's something that's been going on for way longer than America's been around. And sure enough, if you look at the kitchens of the most exciting chefs in America today, you see evidence of these dynamics all the time. So this session is an opportunity for us to hear from two such chefs who spent years cooking not exactly reproductions of global cuisines, but who work in a style that draws on flavors and techniques from places far away from where they grew up. We're gonna hear from Chef Chris Jaeckle of Alanda and Matt Rudofker from Momofuku Sambar, and they'll talk about how they draw inspiration and create using a wide-ranging pantry. So first, I'd like to introduce Chef Matthew Rudofker. I am always not sure if I pronounce his name right, and I should have asked him when I spoke to him, but I'm sorry, Chef. Anyway, Chef Matt's first kitchen experience came at Vetri Restaurant in his hometown of Philadelphia. And throughout his career, he's worked with extraordinary mentors in Cornelius Gallagher, Shea Gallant, Danielle Ballou, and completed a stage at the Fat Duck before becoming the executive chef of Momofuku Sambar at a young age. And actually I know about his age because he was recently named to the Forbes 30 Under 30 list, as I watch my hopes for 50 under 50 sort of slip away. But I would love to bring to the stage Matt Rudofker.
My name is Matt. Some people call me Rudy. Francis, thank you for the introduction. One thing that Francis really got me thinking about as he was introducing me and his talk before is I would really define myself kind of like a culinary orphan. I never had a very impactful culinary impact from my family, from my heritage. Food wasn't really important to my family. So in a sense, my culinary identity, what I cook, what I want to cook, has been built upon the restaurants that I've worked in, food that I've eaten, books that I've read, places that I've traveled. I think Momofuku very much embodies that style. I wanted to kind of explore how do you define the cuisine of a restaurant and use Sambar as a bit of a case example. For those of you who don't know, Momofuku Sambar is in the East Village of New York City on the corner of 13th and 2nd. It started as a burrito bar. You would walk up, come in, go up to a counter, order either buns or burrito. They'd make it for you. You go get soda or OB beer and sit down. But that quickly changed. Now, Momofuku Sambar is known for being on the San Pellegrino list, top 50, top 100. To me, it's changed a lot of how we dine, especially in New York. I think before this restaurant, to get really interesting, creative, delicious food, you had to go somewhere where it was more fine dining. It wasn't as common to find delicious, creative, interesting food in casual to uncomfortable settings. I will say the backless hard wooden seats are not the most comfortable setting to dine, especially if you're going to be there for a couple hours. But one of those things that happened that was very interesting is out of that failure, most people don't know, Sambar was on the bridge of failure. No one was coming for burritos. No one was there to dine. It was empty from 12 to 12. So something had to happen. Something had to change, or this was going to be a failed project. What started that change and what started the evolution to what it is today was the late night menu. Basically, the team of chefs you don't have anybody coming in to eat at your restaurant. You just need to do something. You need to find some sort of creative crucible to make yourself happy, because when you're not cooking for anyone, there's no way a chef is going to be happy. So the late night menu started. Basically, you would come in and you could have anything from oysters to country ham and red-eye gravy to kimchi stew, all the way to pork chop with ram ranch dressing. As that started to develop, people started to come to the restaurant. The restaurant would be empty from 12 to 10, but then from 10 to 2, it'd be packed. Sort of a phenomenon that outside of Blue Ribbon, I think you really didn't see very often. And soon we realized, well, we need to start serving this food and this menu from 12 to 2 a.m. every day. And that's what we started to do. One of the things that we found where people were interested. People wanted to try new things. They didn't care about the environment. And we were excited to cook pretty much whatever we wanted. The Sam still holds true, and as we've evolved, we've seen the Bo Sam, as you can see, is one of the things we started with. It's a concept we've started to evolve on, focusing on large format meals such as the rotisserie duck, which again sort of derives loose inspiration from Peking duck, and then moving into something a little bit more classic, being our ribeye dinner, which is sort of our take on the classic New York steakhouse. As we've evolved, we've seen our development of flavors change. We've moved away from this concept of the burrito, even though we do now, again, serve it at lunch. And we've looked at how is our culture and our individual identities represented in the food that we do. We often talk about sambar and momofuku being a kitchen made up of individuals. The time and the cuisine of the restaurant is about who's working at that time. So, for example, right now, myself, as I said, kind of a culinary orphan, no background. One of my sous chefs, Nick, is of Chinese descent. My other sous chef, Brandon, comes from the Carolinas and has very much influenced his life by Southern cuisine. And one of my newest sous chefs, Armando, started with us 7 years ago at 18, started as a porter, then became a dishwasher, then a prep cook, then a line cook, and now 7 years later as a sous chef. And his life and his cuisine is very much influenced from Pueblo, where he's from. And we try to make it a point to have all of those culinary flavors and identities represented. At the same time, we are oftentimes thought of as a Korean restaurant, which to me is one of the furthest things from the truth. What we do often see, though, is we are inspired many times from Asia, and we see those in two different ways. One of the dishes I wanted to show on your right, is an example of how we use Asian flavors or Asian mentality and bridge them with a worldly palate. So the sardine dish, we just call it sardines on toast. It's influenced from classic Italian crostini, chickpeas, cooked sardines, or in the classic case, anchovies on toasted bread. Something that's very classic Italian, but we've sort of adopted a very Japanese mentality with it. So instead of just chickpeas, we've made it something developed by our culinary lab called Hozan, which is a similar process in making misos, but instead of using soybeans, we've taken chickpeas, fermented them, and turned them into a paste, very much in the idea of miso, of where you're using fermentation, creation of amino acids to create new flavor concepts that really wouldn't be able to develop without that fermentation process. The sardines, instead of poaching them or cooking them or brining them, we've taken a Japanese technique used for sushi, of where you're, in a sense, cooking mackerels or cooking saba in vinegar and sake. So we brine the sardines for about 7 hours in sake, which almost completely cooks them. And then on top, we have pretty similar to what would basically be an Italian gremolata: oregano, parsley, chili, garlic, and then a little bit of hearts of palm. Something very simple, something that on the face front would seem Italian, but all of the concepts, all the techniques behind it are very Japanese in the identity, and that was our approach to this dish. Another one that fascinates me is the chawanmushi. This dish, again, seems very Japanese. It's a very classic dish, but where we developed this dish from came to be very classic French. The dish originally was poached egg with chanterelles, brown butter, and spinach. If you were to think about those flavors, I think most people would think French. But what we did was we instead changed those flavors and made it into something that was a little bit more Japanese, where really the home and our inspiration came from me at working at Danielle and using those flavors. Oftentimes, one time we did a dish where it was a spinach puree with roasted halibut and chanterelles. And this, in a sense, is my evolution of that. Now working at a restaurant where we do use a lot of Asian mentality in the way we cook. So this is, for me, this is how I went from a French restaurant to one that does use a bit of an Asian sensibility to it. So for this dish, we basically, if you're not familiar with chow and mushi, it's basically an egg custard made from using a dashi, bonito kombu, and eggs, and steamed. But we kept, outside of that, we really kept the flavors traditional. Chanterelles, in this sense, a little bit of truffles, brown butter, spinach, and really taking something that, for me, was classic in home French cooking and making it into something that is more refined Japanese cuisine. And then we move on to something where it's kind of going back a little bit to my heritage, the pork bun. Obviously, this is not a pork bun, but it's something really in the end that this company was built upon. I don't think anybody shies away from saying that one singular dish really, carried us a long way. But this is sort of where I can bring my influence and my background and something that I grew up eating into the reflections of our restaurant. I have an Eastern European background. Often grew up eating smoked fish, smoked meats, different things like that. When we started doing brunch at the restaurant, which was a bit of a crazy idea for Momofuku to be doing brunch, we wanted to do a bun, but we wanted to do it a little bit different way. So we did the smoked salmon bun. During the wild salmon season, we bring in wild salmon, cure it, smoke it, treat it like you get bagels and lox down at Russ and Daughters. And it's our way of putting our personal influence, our personal effect onto the menu that we have at that time. And we've seen that continue to develop. So the one question that I typically ask is, how do you define what cuisine is, a restaurant? When you choose, as Francis was saying, when you're deciding where you want to eat, whether it's French, Italian, Asian, modern Asian, how is a restaurant owner, a business operator, do you define what cuisine your restaurant is? And that's something that I've often been asked and struggle with at times to figure out how do we define what Momofuku as well as Momofuku Sambar is. Because to me, in the end, we're a restaurant where you're as often going to be able to come and get something like a pork bun, which obviously has Korean descent, something like the spicy pork sausage and rice cakes, but then you're often as likely to see something like the sardines, which has Japanese but Italian mentality, a dish like the smoked salmon bun, which is really going back to Eastern European and Jewish heritage, all the way up to a dish we just put on the menu last week, which was fried duck and chicken wings in a pineapple and adobo glaze with mole, which obviously should have came from my sous chef Armando, where we're trying to give him that venue where he can take those flavors, those concepts, those ideas that are close to him, that he wants to express and share, and give him a venue to do that. And that's something that we feel really passionately about.
Do we have questions for Chef Matt, or can we get? Do we do the microphone thing? Yeah. It's that ice. Hands totally on that ice. Let me kick this off then with some questions for you, Chef. I know you'd mentioned the culinary heritage or the cultural heritage of some of your sous chefs. I think you'd mentioned one's family's from China, one's family's from the South, the American South, one's family is from Puebla, Mexico, and how they bring their sensibilities into the restaurant. For you personally, do you find yourself learning from different cuisines? And if so, how do you do that? How do you research them? Is there a process or a method you
I think
use?
For me, a lot of my goal when I was a cook coming up was to learn as much about different cuisines as possible. Because I didn't have a strong culinary background as far as a heritage that was instilled in me from a youth, I made it a point in my career to work at a variety of different restaurants. So first at Vetri, which is a very classic Italian restaurant in Philadelphia. Striped Bass, which is a very seafood modern restaurant in Philadelphia that doesn't exist anymore. Then Crew, which was very modern American restaurant that had heavy European as well as Japanese influences. Danielle, classic French restaurant that I would say also, they would say is also a classic French modern New York restaurant. Blue Hill Stone Barns, obviously they're doing some incredible things with how we're focusing on the way we think about food. And for me, that's been a lot of my influence. But a good example, going back to the sous chefs, I went down to Charleston a few years ago, and I went to a restaurant, I had pimento cheese. And I was like, whoa, this is awesome. This is amazing. I've never had something like this. And I came back and I asked my sous chef, I was like, you have a pimento cheese recipe? He's like, dude, I love pimento cheese. I grew up on that shit. And out of that, we did a soft shell crab and pimento cheese dish. And it was out of simply taking that trip down there, eating something that was new to me, and then knowing that this is something that my sous chef knows actually extremely well. And we were able to develop that into something that fits on our menu and can be an interesting experience to our guests who maybe have experienced it, and it could be like a homecoming for them, or it's a new flavor or something that they've never experienced before.
And you also described yourself before, though, as, or your background, you said your personal family background doesn't have a lot of impact on the way you cook today, at least as a chef, as a professional. You know, sometimes when you said that, it was interesting to me because I think, so often when people, want to represent the cuisine they came from or want to represent the culture they came from, there's a really strong sense of, I want to do this, quote unquote, the right way. Or I want to showcase what I know or what my family taught me, quote unquote, the right way. What I hear from you is you come to all these cuisines first as an outsider and you try to learn from them, be inspired by them, and take them and sort of do your own thing with them. Do you ever feel like there are lines you shouldn't cross? Do you feel like, that's a right way to do something, or that's a wrong way to do something? Or do you feel like, hey, it's kind of fair game for me to do anything?
I think for me personally, I would look at myself, I think Dave would look at myself as being someone who's based on technique. And I think techniques, as far as from a cooking standpoint, there's a lot of similarities throughout different cuisines. To me, I look at it as using the techniques that I know and applying different flavors. I'm by no means an expert on any style of cuisine. If there's anything I know the least about, especially, would be Chinese and Korean cuisine. And that is a line where I don't try to make it as if this is something I'm extremely knowledgeable about, as this is a cuisine that I could be an expert on. What I do say is I can do is I know the styles and the flavors that I like and that I enjoy, and that for us at Sambar and Momofuku, we want to bring together delicious flavors, use interesting techniques, and try to present something to the guests that they're going to enjoy at the same time that's approachable, using the background histories. We've always said we're not a restaurant that's made up of one person. It's not, and Dave is the biggest proponent of this. It's not about the owner. It's not about the executive chefs. It's about everyone from the executive chef down to the dishwasher to have their impact on that restaurant. And I don't think we could be where we are if we did not embrace the individuality of each person.
Do we have questions for Chef Matt? Happy to run a microphone to you. Thoughts, comments, concerns? Comments on his t-shirt. Looks very comfortable. No? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Next in this session is Chef Chris Jaeckle. Chris is the proprietor chef of the smash hit Al Onda in Manhattan, but his culinary start was as a busboy, and he attended the Westbury Vocational School for the Culinary Arts throughout high school. And after graduation, he went to Johnson & Wales, which I always like to say here to hear if anyone boos. And there are no boos. No boos for Johnson & Wales. We've all come together finally at last. I just got shushed. After years cooking at an American, some wars don't, like Cold Wars. It's like a Cold War now. Like, we don't want to. Anyway, where was I? Bad joke. Okay, back to the bio. After years cooking at an American place, Tabla and 11 Madison Park, he became sous chef at Morimoto, where he learned how to make rice, but really, really make rice. And there he developed a reverence for the processes and the precision of Japanese cuisine. After earning a 3-star New York Times review at the Italian leading I Fiori, he then moved on to open Alanda, where he combines his love of both Italian and Japanese cuisines. He also recently opened Uma Temakaria as co-founder and chef, which is the country's first fast casual restaurant focused on hand-roll sushi. So please welcome to the stage Chef Chris Jaeckle.
How's everybody doing today? Thanks for taking the time to listen to me. I don't know if I'm relevant or not, but I'm very appreciative of the fact that everyone's here to see both Matt, I, and Francis. I think it's humbling to say the least. So I sort of thought about what I could do to represent what we sort of discussed in terms of culture and restaurant, and Matt sort of briefly touched on the Italian and Japanese side of things, and I've sort of set out as a goal as a chef, and sort of what I've chosen to sort of be my stamp on this industry is sort of getting people to understand the symbiotic relationship between what Japanese cuisine and what Italian cuisine is. And I opened an Italian restaurant, which is Alonda, and at root is an Italian restaurant, but there's certainly Japanese inflection in that food. Parmesan dashi is our base stock for almost everything we make. It's made very similarly to the traditional dashi. We use ice instead of cold water, so it comes up very slowly. We use Parmesan rinds along with the kombu, so that sort of helps us develop these flavors that are both naturally Japanese and Italian. That's just one basic example, but scientifically I think they really come together, and if anyone saw my demo yesterday, you've heard this already a little bit, but I think it's important to understand that not only geographically do they make sense, they're all surrounded by water, have mountainous regions, preservation methods are very similar, culturally they're very similar, it's about family, and it's about sitting down and tradition and understanding those traditions. While I, like Matt, may not necessarily be in that realm, I'm a New Yorker. My family's been in Brooklyn for 150 years, and we're the first generation to make it to Nassau County. Okay, so which is just outside of Queens and Brooklyn. So I'm sort of a bit of a mishmash. I'm Italian and Irish and German and Dutch and Swedish and English. So I'm certainly an American. So the heritage for me. Some of the Italian background certainly comes through from my grandmother. She had a garden and that sort of thing. So, and she cooked in that sort of vein. But I also trained through a great deal of different varieties of cuisines, and I think that sort of alters what we do, and it builds on the culture that I guess we're sort of discussing here today, and why. So I spent 3 years at Tabla doing Indian cuisine, which was interpretive Indian cuisine, but the chef was an Indian individual, and Floyd Cardozo, if everyone knows who he is or does not know who he is, potentially the most talented actual cook I've ever worked for. Really, really shockingly special guy. 11 Madison Park with Kerry Heffernan as well as Daniel Hume, a French bistro side of it with Kerry, and a much more refined French-American side of it with Daniel Hume. Morimoto, obviously. Francis touched on making rice. And, you can say whatever you want about Morimoto and that restaurant, but, the rice is really a special thing there, and I think it's very underappreciated. And frankly, I think he has a bit of his persona, and it certainly precedes him, but I think he gets a little bit of beat up from the real foodie individuals. And I think it's because he's misunderstood in regards to how rooted in tradition he truly is. And you see it in his clothing when he sort of represents his roots in Japan, but the rice comes in and is brown and it gets husked every morning. It gets run through a sort of circular rasp and is polished every single morning. It's rinsed really by hand and processed well, and the rice is made in Hungary, and it really stays true to the roots in that, and I was fortunate enough to do that every day for a long time. So it certainly influenced some of what I do. Spending 3 years making rice, it certainly, it can influence you. So I sort of just wanted to touch on some of that and why, Italian cuisine and rice also has some impact in what they do. So let's get sort of onto the demo and sort of why I'm here and the sensibilities behind it. So we're doing mackerel today. So graciously given to us from Norwegian Foods. So I sort of wanted to walk through butchering one. I am guessing most of you have sort of seen this, but we all do it a little bit differently. So I'd like to show that. And then we'll get into the sort of sensibilities of both Japan and Italy through the flavor profiles that we do and here. So I want to start with sort of just the basics. So we come in, and you can see here I've sort of run my knife all the way up almost to the head, okay, and the innards have been removed. And what you do is you take your finger and run under a little bit of water and sort of dig in. You want to get as much blood out of this as possible. You really don't want that blood and the bile and the insides of this to sort of touch the flesh. So it's really important that you get this out so you don't sort of break the stomach sac and get those sort of things onto the flesh of the fish. Okay. Then you want to come in sort of just behind the front wing, twist if you need to go through the bone, and take the head off. So this is my personal preference. Some people leave the head on when they do this. I find personally that when you do that, when you get to the flip side and the other fillet, you sort of have this like process that gets a little difficult to maneuver through because the head's very cumbersome. So for me, this is sort of my method. And I like to start on the top, just above. You guys can see from above, just above this line here, which is sort of its spine, and above the fin structure right here. Keep your knife wet and clean, also very important. So you want to take as few strokes as possible, so really trust your hand and your knife to sort of go through very gently and sort of come through. And when you get to here, you'll feel the tip of your knife hitting the rib cage and the bones. So you want to sort of stop. And then when you find the knife not touching that anymore, you want to tilt your hand up, sort of come in. So you really work around that spine, so you really don't get any waste in that sort of regard. Then these bones are reasonably weak, so it's pretty easy to go through. Just give a lift and pull through. And then again, simple, slow strokes. Come off. Beautiful. And I like to repeat the process, but a little bit differently on this side. So I come in here, sort of come through, same way, but I start from the bottom. So that sort of gives me the same structure. I'm feeling the bones come in. Then I come through, starting from the bottom of the fish this time, and the same, single stroke as much as possible. Same, you feel the bones. So now you want to tilt the knife in the opposite way. Kind of grab the tail and just pull through the bones. Okay? There you have the second one. So you can see there's very little, if you really want to get into this, a lot of restaurants, a lot of chefs use this. This is some of where your tartare comes from. So you take a spoon and shred it out. Mackerel, I tend to not do that with. I just sort of wanted you to see the technique. And the reason for that is inside, mackerel can be forward in flavor. And along that spine, it certainly increases in the strength of that. And you can see the bloodiness of it as well sort of changes with these blue skin style fish. But you can really see how much, and I'm pretty proficient at this. There's certainly not waste there, but it's really a great utilization method for you to sort of pull that off and continue to move forward. And there's always going to be a little bit of trim as you're processing. So that's really a great utilization method. Again, wipe down, keep your work surface clean. It's important that you don't get this sort of blood and all that sort of stuff around it. Then I like to come in personally here, so you can see the bone structure that runs down through here. So you come in, and for me, you see a lot of people miss the belly. They kind of just come in and sort of, I don't need this, and cut through it. It's really the best part of the fish. It really is. It's fatty. It's tons of flavor. So there's the first one. Okay. The second one is the same process. Start here, and I like to inch in a little bit. I know we talked about long strokes, but for me, when I come in here, I like to sort of inch her in because it gives me the opportunity to tilt my knife up when I get there, so that I don't lose that belly, which again, I think a lot of people sort of don't take into appreciation. And so you can see here, we really have the whole fillet. You have this opportunity. A lot of people use this for tartare because it's difficult. I'm a little tall for this kitchen. So it's not the first time. It won't be the last time, unfortunately. So my head gets softer every year. Anyway, there's two sort of pin bone methods. My staff at Alonda has graciously removed my fish tweezers from my tool bane. So it happens. When I try and Matt mentioned family and sort of that environment and nurturing people. My tools are, my knives in particular, everything sits out. I have a lot of faith in my employees. Maybe you can call me not smart or whatever it wants to do. I'm very passionate about my tools. I spend lots of money on them. I think it's really important that they understand and have appreciation for it. Sometimes I lose a spoon. Sometimes I lose tweezers to pull out my fish. I'm yet to lose a knife. We won't have a problem until I lose a knife. You know, this one in particular is it actually was the first from this company I bought. This knife's almost 15 years old. So it's important you sort of respect your tools and take care of them. So again, we won't have any issues with my team until these start disappearing. So this, since we don't have the tweezers for it, you want to come in, we'll show you why when I get to that process here. So you want to come in, when we show you the plate, just follow that line and feel the bones sort of come out. And this is not really very wasteful in this particular case because you'll see the plating, okay? And again, follow the bones, just come around, and that's that. So you can see really very little in terms of waste in process, but those bones have been completely removed. And for this particular case, it works very nicely for us. It also saves a great deal of time. All right, so now we can talk about the sensibilities of Japan and Italy here, and how this dish sort of came together for me. So we chose to use the term Venetian for the restaurant as like a simple descriptor, and I'll sort of talk about why, and then how this dish sort of relates to what we do at Alonda and how it relates to both Italian and Japanese cuisine. So we chose Venetian as the region for several reasons. Number one, people, especially New Yorkers, like to ask, and Matt touched on this, about how to describe the identity of sambar, and how to, so I was looking for a way to describe the identity of what Alonda is. And the Veneto is, you know, for hundreds of years was the focal point and the center of the trade into Europe from the east. Marco Polo is from there. Arguably, you can discuss whether he introduced noodles to Italy or not. I don't actually think that's the case, but a lot of people do believe that, and there's some theory and possibility to that. So you can see the spice trade, pepper, coriander seed, noodles potentially were introduced into Italy through this region. So it was really a place where I felt I could stay semi-authentic to what I was doing and have it a very brief terminology. So what is it? Oh, it's Venetian, and why? You know, so that was sort of why we chose it. And there's a dish, this is inspired by, called sardines and sore, which is doesn't get any more classically Venetian. All right, it's a sardine that's cured, similar to what Matt had mentioned, not in sake in his particular case, but in vinegars. So it's sort of soured and cooked with some onions, and those onions are generally sweated; they're not caramelized. And so what we do at the restaurant is we treat the mackerel with a light curing of salt. So they sit on a bed of salt for for 9 minutes. We time it. So we literally take it and absolutely cover the entire flesh, skin side, in salt, so it's sort of a pile. We set a timer. Come to the marketplace. You'll be able to try this today. We're certainly serving it there. So covered in salt for 9 minutes. And then what happens is it sort of firms up the flesh a little bit. You can see there's a little bit of looseness here. So it sort of really helps tighten it up. It also helps evenly slice. It becomes a little bit more firm. If you see in sushi restaurants and Japanese restaurants, this happens a great deal to blue skin fish in particular. Sardine is also blue skin fish. But you see lightly salting in a lot of other areas to sort of tighten the flesh up and sort of make it easier to manipulate. And then it gets a bath in white balsamic. So this is where we sort of start stepping away from what is Japanese and what is Italian. So I find white balsamic has some of the similar traits and sweetness to what you find from lighter rice vinegars and sweeter rice vinegars. So it's a similar technique to what the Japanese do, and it's not very similar to what the Italians do. So the Italians cure it in vinegar, but they cure it to the point where it's fully cooked and very, very sour, and they use these sweated onions and the sweetness from that to sort of balance out the flavors. And in this particular case, we very lightly cure it in vinegar, and then we pickle our onions, and that pickle is sort of what brings up the acid in this dish. So I'm going to assemble sort of what we do and why. So here you can sort of see where we come from afterwards. You can see the difference already in the color of the flesh. So you see the pinkness and you see the sort of cooked look to it. That's from a basic cure, again, only for a few minutes. We then torch the skin very lightly, and that's just to sort of allow us to pull the excess off. So this particular mackerel has a very thin skin, so it's really easy to sort of pull once it's been torched. It sort of shrinks down and slides right off. There's another school or method, depending on the mackerel and how thick or thin the skin is. If the skin's very thin, you just want to blister it, and it won't peel that extra piece off. So the next element to this is we sort of are blending, again, a little bit of French as well, so verjus, okay? In the restaurant, we get it from Wolfer Estates, which is Long Island. That's personally, I'm from there, so that helps me in some sense. Keep it sort of true to myself and locality of it, which I think is important to both Japanese and Italian cuisines. And on that note, we keep it simple. So the raisins have been sort of marinated in that verjus. They're golden raisins, so you bring up a little bit of the acidity from the sweetness. Again, we didn't add much in terms of acidity to the fish itself, so we're really trying to build that up. Pine nuts are another very traditional and rooted thing in what the Veneto does. We have some parsley, also building on those flavors. Olive oil as well. It's a brand new squeeze bottle. You don't see a lot of those in restaurants. Anyway, so that's really a very simple sort of salad. Just a mix of, we have lots of acid, lots of sweetness, lots of sort of building of flavor. We have some umami and some omega-3s from the fish, certainly. And that's sort of just placed around next to some of them in neat little piles. I think it gives a nice little color pop, a nice little contrast in textures and flavors to the fish. We'll sort of touch on the sensibility of things again, the simplicity of it. You know, the Japanese, I think, focus a little bit more on the aesthetics of the way they plate their food, which I think is represented in some fashion in the plateware choice. If you look at our website, you can certainly see it. There's slate, there's terracotta, there's a great deal of Japanese influence in terms of the plateware. And I'm not a microgreen guy. I think that, me personally anyway, they have a place in a lot of restaurants and cuisines. But for me, they don't quite pack the same flavor that larger herbs do. So I like to sort of pick them apart and put small pieces on. At the restaurants in particular, you'll see a lot of that because I think it's about flavor more than anything else. I mean, it has to look nice, clearly, okay? But it's really about how the food tastes, and it's sort of what's the point if it's beautiful and it just sits there and you don't want to continue to eat it, right? I mean, I could make an inappropriate reference right now, but I'm gonna use my better judgment here. And not sort of go there, but it's really important to develop the flavor. I also like freshness, which I think is representative of a lot of both of these cuisines. So we hit it with a little bit of fresh lemon juice. If there's something I can sort of one thing I hope you guys take away from this, old lemon juice and old lime juice and old juice, it's atrocious, guys. It's atrocious. All right, like at Tabla in particular, we juiced 2 cases of limes a day. It was a very big restaurant, and we did it in the morning for lunch service, and we did it at night for dinner service. That's how passionate Floyd was about it. I don't have the labor for that, unfortunately. I don't have the luxury of having a kitchen that has 27 staff members in it. So what we do is we sort of cut them down, and we de-seed them, so that every service, we have piles of these, like literal big piles of them on the front pass, and the expediter, which is a sous chef or myself every day, finishes almost everything with the fresh lemon. It's really important. In Alonda, it's lemon, it can be lime, whatever it is. But it's really the freshness. You can taste it instantly. Once you know the difference and you taste the two side by side, you'll never want like old juice again. It will never happen. And at the beginning, I know I impressed a lot of cooks by sort of, because we do juice again, man. We do this isn't going to work out. So we get a little. I'm going to end up with a big olive oil soup on the bottom of the plate. So we get a little bit of olive oil on here too to sort of balance that out. I ate at a Cuban restaurant recently, and the chef asked me what I thought about all the food and ceviches, and my answer was everything was seasoned and wonderful, but my answer was I craved fat to cut through the acidity of everything, and I think that's a balancing of flavors is a very, very important touch point here. So here's our Japanese cured mackerel with our Italian sort of salad of golden raisins and pickled onions and pine nuts. So we have this nice little relish that's very, very Italian, and then we have this fish that's treated very, very Japanese with the addition or subtraction of rice vinegar and the addition of white balsamic to sort of tie them two together. This is a technique I picked up through studying Japanese cuisine and through studying Italian cuisine. So here's our dish, all right? And I just sort of want one more sort of conversation about this and togetherness, and I think Matt touched on it, and it's interesting, and Francis touched on it in the sense that where is our heritage from, and what is our heritage, and what American is this melting pot. It's a cliche term, but it's just the truth. And I don't want to get into what Francis touched on in regards to why we can get financing, or we don't have accents, or whatever it is. That's arguable. I might have a New York accent. But it's sort of I think we're a little bit freer as Americans, and we're exposed to more things culturally than a lot of other nations are, because we come from such a different and varied background. So it's difficult to sort of pigeonhole what we do and allow us to sort of stay in one genre, and we do choose cuisine how we want to eat, not necessarily a product or a dish. And it's an interesting point, and I hope we've briefly sort of had a conversation about why I think and how Italian and Japanese comes together, because I really think it makes a lot of sense, and the more people sort of listen and understand and come to my restaurant and appreciate it, I believe that it's changing a lot. And I think in the beginning I got a lot of sort of flack for this will never work and this is a silly idea, and the more people come in and the more people eat, they realize that it's unforced, and that's the most important thing, is it's unforced and it's natural and it makes sense. Yeah, so I guess I'll leave it open for some questions. Francis has anything for me?
Well, I'd love to see if the audience first has questions, comments.
Yeah, shoot.
There's one over there. If you want to come up to the mic, that'd be great, or if you want to just project boldly and courageously.
Was it just a rinse, or do you soak it?
Sure. So the question was the vinegar bath. Was it rinse or was it a soak? So the answer is a little bit of both. So we don't brush the salt off when we do it. So the salt sticks to the flesh, so we pull it off. So the vinegar rinses to remove the salt, but it sits in that vinegar for about 8 minutes. So it's a very, very light cure. It's not a long process where the Italians tend to leave it in overnight and it fully cooks all the way through. In this particular case, it's more of a rinse. So it's a little bit more of the Japanese sensibility of that lightness and, the Asian sensibility, maybe not necessarily Japanese, but that lightness and the curing of the fish. So you still sort of allow the flavor and the texture of the fish to stand out as opposed to the vinegar. Yeah,
Questions?
please.
Yeah, you do one of the greatest riffs, an Italian riff on a ramen bowl with a Parmesan broth.
Yes.
Could you talk just a little bit about that
Yeah,
dish?
of course. So he asked me about a dish I do at the restaurant, which Francis was a big fan of when we first opened. Unfortunately, the reviewers were not big fans of it. So, in the process, it's sort of one of those, well, all right, maybe this is a silly idea and it's not working. And so we did a tortellini and brodo at the beginning, which was my take on this. And it was a blend of, I mentioned Parmesan dashi earlier. So this is sort of us taking Italian roots and Japanese roots and classics and sort of putting it together. And the tortellini and brodo was made of a broth that's of meat. It's quite often chicken, sometimes pork, and you have Parmesan that's boiled into it. So that Parmesan flavor is really rich and focused in what they do in the tortellini al brodo, and it's a meat-stuffed filling, and so that's sort of there. And then I took this sensibility and this I gotta watch out here, and this thought process of the dashi and extracting that flavor of the Parmesan that they do in that brodo and combining it with what dashi is, and I turned it into something that I believe really represents the symbioticness of the two restaurants and myself and why these two cuisines work. So we take the Parmesan and the kombu, we bring it up very, very slowly. We allow it to simmer very lightly, never a boil, because I don't want to extract too much of the fat. So it sort of like comes with a little bit of a gurgle and then gets turned down very, very, very low, just to sort of allow those amino acids and the umami to be released from both the kombu and the Parmesan. and then it's steeped for about 45 minutes or so. Bonito flakes go into it, another sort of umami push, smokiness from it, and that sits for another 45 minutes or so at room temperature. And then we strain it out very gently to keep it as clear as we can. Then it gets seasoned with kombu extract, so we're talking about simplicity here and full flavor and what both of these cuisines represent in another sense. Kombu extract, which is sort of reduced syrup from the kombu leaves that have been sort of the kelp that has been brought down, white soy, and salt. That's it, guys. That's the entire broth. Okay? And it's something that the beginning, some people didn't understand, but a lot of people came in and, Joshua Schmuckler from Moo Ramen, it's a new ramen restaurant in New York City, was sort of like, oh, I'm going to do this dish. He came in 5 times for it. Like, I'm going to do a ramen inspired by this. And so it's something that some people really got it and some people really didn't get it. So we've reinterpreted it at the restaurant now into a ramen. So we make the noodles ourselves using kansoi. It's another sort of blending of the two cuisines. So we import the alkaline salt from Japan called kansoi. And that is what separates ramen from Italian pasta in that sense. Which is another thing I think that's a misnomer and misunderstood while we're on topic. It's my understanding, maybe I'm just being a foreigner here, but that ramen is solely based on the fact that it has this alkaline agent in it. It can be any shape. So it can be a ramen ravioli, from my understanding. It can be a ramen tagliatelle. It can be a ramen spaghetti. It can be anything. And Yuji Ramen from who does some pop-ups in Whole Foods and just opened a restaurant in Brooklyn, does multiple shapes. So I'm starting to play with that manipulation because we are making the noodles ourselves, which very few people do. Most guys buy their noodles. They really do. And I'm sort of surprised by that because you have access now to these ingredients. Why would you not? And it's a point of pride for me. We make all of our noodles in our restaurant. All of our dried noodles we make ourselves, we dry ourselves. All of our fresh noodles we make ourselves. All of our egg doughs, our ramen doughs, all of those sort of things we really make ourselves, and it's a point of pride, and I think it's important. And so yeah, that's the gist of that dish. It does get a float of Calabrian chili oil on the top, so we're tying back Italy into it again. So you have Parmesan, you have bonito flakes, you have kombu, all like rich in umami and glutamate. Parmesan is chock full of glutamate. It's another, we're talking scientifically now about why these things work. Glutamate in both Parmesan, mushrooms, kelp, all of these things sort of chemically bond well together, and I think it's why I believe, and I'm still surprised sometimes when I do things and how well these flavors come together, because I think chemically they bond together, and that creates something that is lasting.
Thank you very much, Chef.
Thank you so much, Matt, Chris, and Francis. And since I was so distracted by my shaved ice snow delight, I did forget to properly introduce Francis, so I will detroduce, I don't know what outroduce him. So Francis is a CIA graduate, very importantly.
Walk away while you do this.
Well, stay here at least. Here, look pretty. Oh, you should. Oh, yeah. He's the editor-at-large at Clarkson Potter and a columnist for the New York Times Magazine. He's the frustration of every other food writer because anytime the James Beard Awards are announced, he sweeps all categories. So Francis is a really, really amazing person. We're very grateful to have him as a moderator here, and you will see him again this afternoon.
All right, and now before I introduce the next session, I have a couple of announcements. Some of you may know that the CIA ran a social media contest around College Bowl time this year called the CIA Flavor Bowl. People were invited to post photos of their favorite foods in a bowl, and we collected them, and our marketing team voted and selected a winner based on the specific criteria that we set forth for the contest. The prize was a registration to the conference, and I'd like to acknowledge the winner of the contest, who I believe is here, Derek Sarno from Austin, Texas. Derek, if you're in the room, please stand up. There he is. Is that? No? I don't know. Derek is at Wicked Healthy on Instagram, and Wicked Healthy is a website that he hosts with his brother Chad. Okay, next, on Wednesday, when you arrived, you should have found a luggage tag that looks like this on your seat. This luggage tag relates to the CIA's World's Culinary Arts Program, sponsored by Unilever Food Solutions. The program is the winner of 2 James Beard Awards and explores the best in food and cooking around the world. The World Culinary Arts Program seeks out the gold standards of culinary traditions, examining iconic recipes of a given country that, when understood, provide a window into the world of that nation's culture. At the same time, the series highlights ingredients, techniques, and recipes and menu strategies that address growing health and wellness imperatives based on the opportunities that each highlighted cuisine and culture represents. So these luggage tags include information about the 9th edition of this digital media and Unilever Food Solutions World Culinary Arts Program, which is about Indonesia and Malaysia. And if you scan the QR code on the back of the luggage tag with your phone, it'll take you to ciaprochef.com, WCA, where you can watch the new Indonesia and Malaysia videos and download all the recipes from the DVD or from this program. We are now going to play a short clip of the opening video of this so you can get a glimpse of what it's like.
From Malaysia's World Heritage City, Malacca, the birthplace of Peranakan cuisine and the sweet and spicy dishes of the Nyonya kitchen, to the Indonesian island of Lombok, where village cooks share ancestral recipes at a lavish outdoor feast. From a smoky street corner in downtown Jakarta, where locals stop to snack on sizzling satay, to the enchanted island of Bali, where spit-roasted pork is carefully turned by hand. The world of food takes us places beyond imagining. Join us on this appetizing tour of Indonesia and Malaysia as we discover the lesser-known flavors of this Southeast Asian region that is captivating diners around the world. Our guide to Indonesia is William Wongso, world-renowned authority on Indonesian food and cooking, accomplished restaurateur, and the TV host of the popular Indonesian series Cooking Adventures with William Wongso. And in Malaysia, we'll join Asian food guru KF Sito to get an insider's tour of Malaysia's home-style kitchens and humble street hawker stalls. In Sumatra's historic region of Jambi, we'll join local cooks as they prepare rustic village dishes layered with complex tropical flavors. What a contrast to the ultra-modern kitchens of Coup d'etat, the culinary workplace of acclaimed pastry chef Will Goldfarb. Behind the scenes at this popular Balinese restaurant, we'll witness some of the artistry that has earned the chef worldwide attention. We'll also pay a visit to Chef Heinz van Holzen to take a class in Indonesian sambals at his Boom Boom Bali restaurant and cooking school. And on a visit to the multicultural metropolis of Kuala Lumpur, we'll meet the chef Dato Ismail Ahmad, whose restaurant Rebung serves up traditional Malay cooking known as kampung. For food lovers, every journey brings new tastes, new ingredients, new skills and inspiration. The more we see, the more we grow. Get ready for a chef's tour of Indonesia and Malaysia.
So please explore that program on our website, and you can share that with anyone. It's free for downloading for anybody who's interested in accessing all those videos and recipes. And that's a nice segue to our next session, because one of the chefs in that session is going to appear in the next general session here, What's Your Bowl, and that'll be William Wongso. But right now I would like to welcome back Leisa Tyler to the stage, who is going to moderate the What's in Your Bowl, Rice, Noodles, and Beyond session.
Thank you. Morning, everybody. Welcome to the next session, which is What's in Your Bowl? Rice, Noodles, and Beyond. We have 3 chefs presenting today. Jehangir Mehta from New York, William Wongso from Jakarta in Java, and Ivan Orkin from Tokyo and New York. First up is Jehangir. Jehangir was born in Mumbai in India before moving to America in the early 90s to attend the CIA. He's the executive chef and owner of New York restaurants Graffiti, Me and You, and Metaphor. He's also the author of the cookbook Mantra, The Rules of Indulgence, and has appeared on the Iron Chef America series. Jehangir will be demonstrating Bel Puri, which is a type of chaat or Indian street food snack generally found across the country. This particular one hails in from Mumbai, which is where it's commonly found sold in push carts on Chowpatty Beach. It's made from puffed rice and rice-fried noodles made from besan flour, where the key to the dish is finding a balance between sweet, salty, tangy, and spicy, as a blend of flavors and textures. Jehangir's version will include beef jerky, chorizo, and shrimp and bacon. It's usually a vegetarian dish. Please welcome him.
Thank you so much for coming, because the only time so many people land up is on the streets of Bombay, but otherwise no one sees such a large group coming in for Bell. So thanks again, and I'll let the 1 billion people know that even first world people come in for Bell in such large numbers. So thanks. Other than that, we have a nice little dorm room guy out here just chilling, and basically, as it's one bowl cooking, that is what dorm room children do quite often, I believe. Am I right to say that? Yeah. And what does your bowl look like normally? Like, is it a glass bowl? What do you have? Like, or do you use those plastic cups? What do you use? Like, do you use things like this? Or, like, is this your bowl in the dorm room? Okay, so some people eat in this, some people eat in fancier bowls, but it's still a one bowl sort of thing that we're going to be doing here. So starting off, it's the basis of this dish is very simple and very cheap in terms of what we have here. It's just puffed rice. So it's right there. This is flavored a little bit with turmeric, which is very good for you. So you remember that you paid a lot of money in our restaurants for eating something which was only 50 cents. So you all should definitely eat some turmeric, because it's good for not getting Alzheimer's. It's a good thing to remember how your money was spent. Other than that, we add a good amount of vegetables to it. And to start off, it's some onions here, tomato, and a little bit of cilantro, as well as there is mint. Potatoes are cheap, so that's why, again, they're used by most people. It's a good filler, and they're just boiled potatoes, so that's mixed in. And they quite often also ask you, do you want dry or do you want wet? Now, when they ask you that, it basically means if you wanted something very dry, this would be the dry mixed version of it, and they will give it to you in a bowl, and that would be it. And if you want wet, there would be some sort of a chutney that would go in. So everyone has a different take on that, and one of the things that we are going to be making is the chutney. So what he's going to do is we're going to add some cilantro to it. Sorry, we don't have a plug point here. Once registration goes up a little more electrical power will come to the front. So please tell your friends to register so we can get more money in the CIA. Till then, the plug points will be at the back. All right? Cilantro, mint, some chilies, okay, right in there. We're going to add a little bit of tamarind paste to it too. All right? A green tomato, which is good. It gives you a good tartness to it. So that would be wonderful to add to. And you could switch it on. A little lemon juice, salt, and if we need to adjust it, we do it with some water. Again, use very little water. California is running out. So, right there. So we've got that going. Yes.
Or it's...
Regular mint is perfectly all right, like whatever grows in your garden. That
Okay.
type of mint is perfectly fine.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really, mint grows in abundance in India, so it's literally what you find outside. What do you like to grow?
Well, just I don't know, I think it's just regular mint, but I think the stuff that we have originally comes from Lebanon, but I don't know.
Yeah, no, ours is
Yeah.
just regular
It's wild.
mint as mint can be.
Yeah.
So once that is pureed very well and made into almost like a sauce, so that's what will be going in here. Till then, what we also have is a little bit of a mango. Now, quite often we try to use the green mango because that will again give it the nice tart aspect to this. But if not, just use a ripe mango, that will be all right. And we have used a little bit of that in here. And lastly, once the chutney is done, we're going to add it. Now, if you were thinking of taking a little bit of a twist to this, what we do is we generally add sautéed shrimp to it and stuff like that. So we're going to make that part of it initially. But on the other hand, what would a dorm room guy do? What would you have in your fridge? Bacon? Okay. I see why you are, how you look. I mean, I get that. Okay. All right, bacon. All right. Beef jerky. Okay. Any more meat items that you would like to tell people about or educate the public that we should eat and look like you instead of me? Okay, those are the big three. Okay, great. So, you have these in your dorm rooms, right in the fridge. Very convenient, my friend. Okay, so you're gonna do this, all right, as you are the chorizo man and the bacon-loving lover, all right? Why don't you saute your bacon in your dorm room? Cut your chorizo and put as much beef jerky that is needed to get to be this. All right? Well, I'll continue doing my healthy cooking over here. All right? So some eyes can be here. You all can switch sides if you all like him more versus mine. You all can switch sides. Okay, you can cheer louder.
We know which is tastier.
Okay, you can cheer louder if he did a better job. Okay, he comes much cheaper to the CIA than I do. So CIA will prefer having him next year. Okay, so right here. So we add a little bit of oil to this pan. We're gonna just add some sort of chilies in here. Here we are using just jalapenos. Again, with chili, if you want a rounded approach of the chili, just throw it whole. If you want it a little sharper, chop it up a little more. Leave the seeds in if you really want that pungent kick to it. But again, we're talking about jalapenos, which are not actually that spicy to start with, so it's perfectly all right. We're just going to add a little bit of that in there, some lime leaves, and some more turmeric. I love my life, and I like to remember it, so we add a lot of turmeric in our food all the time. So this is some fresh turmeric that we have sliced down. In goes it. And once the pan is a bit hot, we're going to saute up the shrimp. How are you doing, buddy? Okay. Oh, that's a lot, my friend. Are you feeding everybody or it's just for you? Okay. Well, don't worry. I think this bowl will be better for you, my friend. Okay. So, all right. So, as you notice, it's very difficult. You chop the bacon, all right, and you put it into a pan. Anything? And what did you do with the chorizo?
Just mince it up.
Minced it up. Okay. All right. Wonderful. You don't let the intestines do that for you? That's too much work for an American intestine. Okay. So we chop up our chorizo, okay, over here. So, all right. Do you think we will be called by HR by the end of it? Do you think that?
Well, you may be.
I know
hoping to stay out of it.
my phone was like going zzz, zzz, the whole time. I think HR is calling me already. So I don't know about yours, but mine definitely is going on. So, and so, all right, don't worry, y'all will forget all about me. There are two other people coming after me. I have just 15 minutes of fame, and then the rest of them will take over after that. So you'll forget all that happened that I said, okay? And the good words will come back by lovely human beings over there coming down. All right. So the shrimp goes next in. We'll put in a little bit of salt to this. And as I mentioned, you don't want to actually put any of your wet items in here too much like the sauce, because it will break it down too fast and that crunchy aspect will go away. So you want to keep it as crunchy as possible till then. And maybe we should divide this for you. Okay? Yeah. Actually, I know how we could divide this better. You're my friend. All yours. You're most welcome. Okay. So, is that all right? They can see from there, right?
I think so.
Anyone can't see, you can come in the front. Okay. So we are just sorting this up. And once that will be done, we are going to add in the sauce. So it's a nice puree that you've got here. Okay. It should be pureed up pretty well. The Vitamix works extremely well for that, and hopefully they'll sponsor us next year. Maybe we can tell them Vitamix is the best mixer in town. All right, so that's right there. Beautiful. So once the shrimp are done, what we are going to do is really mix everything in with the sauce. So for that, what we are doing is just taking our little ingredient out here, a little bit of that sauce, all right, mixing that in to the dish, adding a little more of the sev. Now, sev is basically semolina, which is mixed with, chickpea flour, which is mixed with a little bit of water and some spices if you like, and then just in a fryer, just like sieved through, so you will get these little strands of them like this, and you can just mix that, fry them, make it really hard and crispy, and that's what you'll get out here. So that's right there. And once that's done, our next thing is we take the shrimp, add that in here. Okay. So that's our little version of it. Now let's see the dorm room version, what we are going to be doing. Okay, so that's here. Okay, maybe higher would be better for you to see, then we'll put it here. Okay, so in case they can't see.
I think the camera can find it.
Should I bring it here?
No, it's fine.
Okay, all right. Okay, now let's go to the fatty version. Okay. Oh, sorry, that's not the correct word. I forgot. It hurts the soul when you say that word. I'm sorry. The healthier, whatever.
The more robust version.
More robust, yeah. Masculine. Sorry, I was feminine, he means to say. Now we got it. Okay, all right. So now this will be something, if Hillary says this, it will be a huge problem. It will become race issue and a feminine issue if she says that you're eating this stuff. All right, are we good with it? All right, so we can add that right in there, my friend. Great. Okay, you're going to stir that up. So basically, you could add absolutely anything you wish in this dish and make the flavors work for you, and that is most important, and which I always tell people, and I have said this even in one of my talks out here, that even in the cookbooks or any cookbook that you take, use the cookbook like a Bible. You don't take everything from the Bible. You only take parts that you like to read. All right? That's exactly what you do with a cookbook. All right? Work the cookbook like a Bible. Take things that you like. If you don't like this ingredient, drop it out. You know, it works for whatever works for you. So that's how you should read cookbooks. Okay? We're going to add a little bit of the paste in there. All right? I'm going to mix that in. Now again, if you like it a little more spicy and want another little more kick to it, okay, we can add a little more of the chopped chilies. Yep, chili boy. Okay. All right. What did Suvir Saran call your fingers in the kitchen? No, I don't think he said baby genius. I don't think he used the genius word. He did use chubby fingers is what he called him the whole time. Every time, like, you'd be passing in the kitchen, where's chubby fingers? Where's chubby fingers? And then now chubby fingers is working with me today. All right. He got passed on.
That sounds like severe.
Yeah, that sounds like it.
So is there much variation throughout India with the puri?
With the chat, yes, there could be quite a few. I mean, this is a very traditional one, which is like, again, this is a cheaper version because it has just things which are very, very readily available.
And it's essentially from Bombay or Mumbai, this particular dish.
This is.
So what would you find in Calcutta?
In Calcutta, that's too far. When you have to traverse 1 billion people to just get there, you just stick to one area or just run away to America, which is better. So that's what I did. So you mix all that in. But yes, they will use different things. Like some people will use make samosas and make a samosa chaat, or some people will use like a yogurt-based chaat more with chickpeas, like whole chickpeas and stuff like that. So it's a pretty variation. Something which is crispy, something which is wet, and all mixed in and normally served in a bowl. And that's what a chaat is. So there you go. I think you're good. And do you have the spoons to eat it with? Do you rob the spoons like all school people do? Do your spoons also go away when new students come in? Because I know at University of Massachusetts, I've been told that every time.
Moderator.
Yeah, poor Ken tells me that every time when the students enroll, it's like 20% of spoons and cutlery and crockery are all gone because they go away to the dorm rooms. Does the CIA experience that too? We've never heard about a fundraiser on that, so I guess it doesn't happen. The minute I get an email, there's a fundraiser needed. They need more money because students are taking away cutlery. Okay. That's when I would know, okay, that's happening over here at the CIA. All right. And how do you stand, eat? What do you do normally? I'm very surprised that you at least have your pants on. You removed your chef coat, but thank you for wearing your pants in the dorm rooms. Okay. Do you want some more of something? Do you eat this as bread on the side? Yeah. Yeah?
Beer.
It works.
Yeah.
It works.
Beer.
Okay. All right. So, fine for you?
Great.
Are you going to do this more often in the dorm?
I wish.
Oh, you wish?
I wish.
Okay. All right. So basically, that's a nutshell in a bowl. It could be bowls in any size, shape, or form. I think it is a convenient way of eating. And very often in India, it's even too expensive to get a bowl. So quite often people, especially the dry bell, is always served in just newspaper.
Yes.
And it's just served in that because that's the cheapest form. Or it's or bowls which are made with some leaves.
Yes.
And you just make things work. Coconut shells are the other things that a lot of people dry out and use that in villages as bowls. But
The
in the
eco
end,
versions.
I'm sorry?
The eco version.
The eco versions are, in the end, everyone has to eat in some form or the other. If you're hungry, you're going to eat it from the palm of your hand, whatever it is. But in the end, it goes to the same place. It nourishes the same amount of your brain versus the poor person's brain or whatever. It's still food.
Exactly.
So.
Okay. Thank you so much. That was
My
fantastic.
pleasure. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us. See ya.
Cheeky. We're next bringing William Wongso up to the stage. William hails in from my side of the world, Southeast Asia, specifically Indonesia. He learned cooking from street food vendors while honing his skills at various institutions and restaurants in Australia and Europe, then becoming a leading authority, perhaps the most leading authority in Indonesian and Malaysian cuisine. Today he'll be demonstrating 2 dishes for the province of Jambi, which is on the east coast of Sumatra. Sumatra is Indonesia's most northern island. In its heyday, Jambi, which was around 1000 after death, was heavily involved in the spice trade of the Malacca Straits. which Jambi borders, and it was a centre of education, drawing scholars and traders from the Middle East and India. It was specifically a centre for Buddhist education. All of the people who came to Jambi had a profound effect on its cuisine. William will cook nasi minyak batangari, or South Sumatran fragrant rice, with whole spices, where the whole spices are boiled like tea instead of ground. It has the added ingredients of evaporated milk and ghee butter, which you would not normally find in Indonesian cuisine or Malaysian cuisine, and tomato ketchup, which once again is more of an Indian ingredient, and curry leaves. He will also cook daging masak hitam, which is a beef dish similar to rendang, beef rendang, but using dark roasted grated coconut instead of coconut milk. Okay, please, welcome.
Hi, Leisa. You hear everybody? Hear my voice?
Yes.
Thanks, Leisa. It is very exciting for me to come again. This is my third time coming to World of Flavor Conference. 17 hours flight is not a problem for me.
I know.
And especially when I see the symbol of this time, it's a bowl of rice. And we Indonesians, we don't put the bowl on rice. We wrap the rice on the banana leaf. For rice, for Indonesian, is life and death issue. We have to live with the rice. A lot of people are dying of overconsume of rice because we still have the largest consumption per capita of 130 kilo per year of rice. And it creates a lot of diabetic. People don't realize they live nicely, until they found they overshoot and they pass away. That's not the issue. The issue now that I'd like to share with you is what kind of rice I'm going to present to you, because we have so many rice. Not only we are eating plain rice, we also having rice, like if you go to Singapore, Malaysia, they have a very famous rice called nasi lemak. Nasi is, you remember nasi, so you have to learn many terms for rice. Gohan for Japan, riso for Italy. Now you learn one more, is nasi from Indonesia. When we call about rice with oil, or lemak means fat, then people normally think of the rice must cook with coconut milk. So I've been trying to find out what would be an interesting things to bring it to this event about rice, how we do rice in Indonesia. There's so many things. 17,000 islands, everybody eat rice. They have their own way of rice. But I found one of this Jambi region. The rice is very particular, and they say is nasi minyak. Minyak is oil. But this rice doesn't cook with coconut milk. So why is unique? If you count on the ingredients, there's so many ingredients. From the spice alone, they have cardamom, cumin, caraway, mace, cinnamon, clove, coriander, cinnamon, and what did I tell you the Latin word for this?
Oh,
this
okay. You want me to pronounce it?
Yeah,
Cryptocariaceae.
It's a cinnamon family. I'm sure this much coming from they use in India. India bought a lot. Yeah. Because in Sumatra in the old days, the trade of the spices is not from the Spice Island, which is on the eastern island, but the trade is coming from in the Sumatra. Yes. Whereas most of the spices influenced in the west, in the Sumatra cooking, because of those trade, the Indian, the Arab, the Chinese coming and using these spices. The other unique things is unlikely, like, for instance, in India, they cook with the garam masala. So they ground the spices. In this case, it's totally not. I'd like to show you what they do is to make a tea. Let me see. Bring it here. This is a tea of all the spices. Can you see it? It's a
There they
tea of
can.
all the spices.
Yeah.
They boil to take the tea as using to cook the rice.
Yes.
But there are two versions.
Yes.
The liquid, the tea is for the rice on the first part, and then the strain of the remaining spices is fried and make powder like a
Ground
garam
and-
masala.
Wow.
So the way I interpret it, there are two elements of spices in this particular rice.
Yes.
The tea to give the soul of the rice,
Yes.
and the ground spices is to give the body of the rice. So there are two terms of the rice.
Wow, yeah.
The same thing, but processed in a two different way. So Buddha is going to another thing is all the fresh ingredients, shallot.
Oops, daisy. And just going back
Shall I-
to the spices as a tea, do you find this in other Indonesian dishes?
No.
Or
No, I
it
don't
seems
know.
quite Chinese.
It could be from Chinese because the Chinese, when they do broth, they like to wrap the spice in the cloth instead
then
of
boil
the
it,
yeah,
yeah.
and boil it. And the shallot, the shallot, the process is first the shallot is fried, the stir fried to make it aromatic. And the other thing that he has to do is all the other ingredients like garlic, onion. Besides shallot, there's onion. Onion has to mince finely. Pineapple, garlic, ginger, whatnot. This one we have to cook until the moist evaporated. There's also the base of the spice. That's not yet finished. Another thing which is unique, I believe it could be coming from influence of India, is the evaporated milk. That's not enough. Another one, the ghee,
Ghee, yeah.
has to
Very
be all
Indian.
to go.
Yeah.
You think that's enough? That's not enough.
Tomato.
That's tomato. Tomato sauce. This is one thing is not available here, is curry leaf. So can you imagine with just immense of the spices, fresh ingredient combined into one dish, one rice dish,
Yeah.
is amazing. I have this dish was presented on the first evening at the marketplace.
Okay.
And the other thing is, people would ask what to match with this particular dish. And I have my first presentation in 2009 was rendang.
Okay.
The rendang is
My
a
favorite.
caramelized beef curry. Basically, it's cooking the beef curry and all the spices until it's caramelized. Normally, it takes about 4 hours.
Very spicy.
4 hours when the beef with certificate.
Yeah.
In the village, they know all the cow never have a birth certificate, so they can cook up until 9 hours. And this compared to rendang, the black beef. What is black? No using of coconut cream, but using of roasted grated coconut. It's not easy to find a freshly grated coconut in US, but you can use you have frozen one. I found frozen or dry desiccated coconut, but you must give them some moisture, let it rest for a couple of hours to reconstitute. Then you roast until it's black like this.
So, and what's the essential difference between using coconut milk and using the roasted coconut?
You can't roast the coconut milk.
No, but you can't. But in terms of flavor.
Flavor, you smell.
Okay. Smells like a dessert.
Yes.
And so
For Western nose, it could be for like a dessert. Yes.
It gives more sugars, or what's the flavor difference between the two dishes?
What tradition?
Between using rendang with the coconut milk and then this particular dish.
When cooking rendang, there's no water. But
Right.
this one, you can use
Have
water
water,
to cook
yeah.
and then cook down.
Yeah.
The same, if you want to try, you can do your any kind of braised meat. Don't put your braised beef, for instance, or beef stew. Don't use red wine.
Okay.
And you add this.
Okay.
You
okay.
roast it until it cooked down, until it's thickened, become like this.
Yes.
This is and don't forget, these are the ingredients. It's she can see this part.
It's the camera. Yeah, there they go.
Okay. These are the ingredients: the tamarind, coriander, nutmeg,
Yeah.
salt,
pepper.
pepper, licorice. What do you call it?
Yeah, fennel,
Fennel, and clove,
cloves,
and this is cumin,
cumin.
and candle nut. And
Which you use effectively as a thickener.
pardon?
The candle nut is used more as a thickener or as a
A
flavor?
thickener and
Yeah.
some oil.
Okay.
Also
okay.
oil, and the aroma.
The aroma.
And this is the Indonesian typical Indonesian ketchup manis. Every household you find in Indonesia, they have this ketchup manis. And I have to, everywhere I travel, I have to specifically mention ketchup manis from Indonesia with a different alternate brand. Otherwise, they
Right.
get me something else which doesn't taste salty, neither sweet. You just dip with your finger. Maybe we can pass this whoever want to
It's
try.
quite molasses.
Exactly. Yeah. So we do a lot of things with the sweet soy sauce, and on top of that, we need some palm sugar. But this is for us. This is I get from here,
Yes.
which is lighter.
Yes.
We like to use the darker palm sugar.
Okay.
This is your kind of bay leaf, but our kind is bigger, what we call Indonesian bay leaf.
Yeah.
That normally some of Indonesian, they make a tea from the leaf. They said is make lower the cholesterol. Everything is about cholesterol. Even they blame the coconut milk is to increase the cholesterol.
Yeah.
The funny thing, they never blame the offal. They cook the offals,
Yeah.
the intestine, the brain in the coconut milk. They eat those things, but they give them a bomb of the cholesterol, but they blame the coconut milk. So this is the main issue that we are having. Galangal, you see, for us, this is a giant.
It's a big one.
This is very big.
Yeah.
Not much of the
Yeah.
flavor that we get in Indonesia. But
Yeah.
cooking is everywhere. You cook. You cannot say, oh, there's no exactly the same way you can cook.
Sure.
I can cook. The chili, if I can share with you, if you don't find a big red chili, the red bell pepper is the closest because they have the same aroma, except red bell pepper has sweetness, no spiciness. And you can add some, for the kick, you can add some habanero or jalapeno just for the kick of the spiciness.
Yeah.
This is...
So now you're putting the tea, the spiced tea into the rice.
Yes. And then
Okay.
that's how we like you do risotto,
Yes.
halfway, and then you do it
Okay.
in the
That's
rice cooker.
interesting.
This is how the spice we saute with the meat
Yeah.
slowly.
And you just break the and.
And ramen for the American chef, I think, is very mysterious because when you go to the CIA, like I did, they teach you to clean that stock over and over again till it's completely pure and not cloudy. And when you make ramen, it's the opposite. You want to make it cloudy and rich and crazy, and you add fat into it rather than taking fat out of it. So I came across a lot of books that I was reading and personal experiences, and I thought the sofrito was a great way to sort of add in flavor to the soup that you make. A lot of my ramen dishes are based on a sofrito that then have soy sauce worked into it, or sea salt, or I'm going to do one down in the city this week where I make an eggplant sofrito with chilies and eggplant and this sofrito base, and it's really great. And the shoyu tare, which is similar to the one that I use in my meat ramen. It's the same one. And that's what the tare looks like when it's done. So this is really, this is more another tare that we make similar in style. This is sort of an interesting thing to take a look at, in that we needed to figure out how do we add fat, to a vegetarian ramen. Because as I said in the video, if you don't have fat, you don't have ramen. I don't really care what someone says. If the vegan guy tells you don't eat fat, run screaming, because he's wrong. You really need that. The same reason I think low-fat hamburgers are an abomination. If you're gonna eat a hamburger, eat a fucking hamburger. And it's just my personal opinion. But there's a lot of wonderful things that don't require fat. Ramen's not one of them. So we came up with a fat that has things with umami in them, and a little bit of chili and seaweed and shiitake, and we came up with this great fat that I think really mimics the pork and the chicken fat that we use at the restaurant for the meat dishes. So it really works nice, and the assembly, like we were showing earlier, is adding all these ingredients, the tare and the fat, and then the soup, and then the noodles. And boy, they did a really nice job on this. And we add a little tomato. I mean, one of my signature things in Japan I've been doing for the last 8 years, I add roasted tomatoes to my ramen. And at the time, nobody was doing that. I think a lot of people do it now. But it's to me, it made, once again, I was sort of sitting in my house in Tokyo, like, how do I make ramen, and how are people going to accept me, and how is it going to work? And I kept thinking, well, what has umami in it? What would work? What would taste great? And I've always found tomatoes intriguing, and they're luscious tasting. They have all that crazy umami and that sweetness and everything. And I use them in a lot of my ramen dishes, and it makes sense to put it in a vegetarian dish.
You find restaurants in Tokyo now also put tomato in their ramen?
I won't say that they all copied me, but you can take it how you want. Yes, it's there a lot now.
Yeah.
I also probably was one of the only dudes with an oven.
Yeah.
So,
right.
When I built my kitchen, I insisted, that there was an oven in there. So I roasted tomatoes low and slow for, 5 hours until they were really leathery and sweet and really nice. And I also had a dish, a well-known dish in Japan, was shredded pork on rice with a roasted tomato on top, which was wonderful. And some enoki mushrooms, which has become our number 1 topping for vegetarian and meat ramen. Very interesting. It's a wonderful mushroom. Okay, there. See, I'm gonna bop through because it looks like we're moving along here. This is our dashi. I'm not really sure why we're showing you the dashi, because I think I see why. Okay, so we have this. That was my vegetarian ramen spiel. And my next spiel is going to be our next discussion of things in a bowl. In Japan, donburi, everybody knows what a donburi is, right? A donburi really is the bowl itself, but having rice and things on top of it, and there's restaurants that only do donburi, and then there's restaurants that have that and other things. A lot of ramen shops will do a small donburi with some of the leftover pork belly and a little sweet tare on top, maybe a little onion, and they do that, and maybe 1 or 2 kinds of ramen. That's the shop. And I did that in Tokyo. In America, we're under a lot more pressure to have larger menus, and Americans like choice, and if you want to succeed, you have to play a little bit. So we came up with a series of donburi at my smaller restaurant at Slurp Shop, and one of them we did is a smoked salmon donburi with furikake, which is the rice people love in Japan to sprinkle on their rice, which I think we started showing here. And it's all these different ingredients of dry onion and garlic and sesame and sugar and salt and seaweed. And we grind that all up together, and we mix our rice into that, or we mix that into our rice. We make a sweet tade using some of the dashi that I flew through. We moisten the rice a little bit and add this furikake, as you can see here. Wow, this is very, very detailed. This is making rice. There we go, to assembly. So we have our rice, we sprinkle our furikake on top, and it's really nice. It makes it super aromatic. It gives it really nice flavor. Americans aren't used to eating plain rice. A Japanese person would really get eating a bowl of just white rice. I get eating a bowl of white rice, but I think it makes it more fun for an American diner. We put fresh julienne cucumbers on top of that. We slice this wonderful egg, and then we have our this is actually a hot smoked salmon that we break apart, put it on top of this, and then some salmon eggs on top of that with this lovely egg. It's funny because here I'm a Jewish guy from New York, moved to Japan for 10 years and come back, and I guess somehow the storyline is that everything I do is through the lens of settlers in the Lower East Side, the turn of the century. That's really obviously not the case, but I am also very comfortable with the flavors of the Lower East Side and of Jewish food and smoked fish and flavors like that, and I think New Yorkers really love that, and it really works. It's really fun, and this is by far our most popular donburi.
That looks delicious.
It really works. It's like I said, I hate gimmick cooking, and I don't do it. I never write down a menu idea and then try to cook it. I generally cook from ingredients I love or flavor profiles I'm interested in. But every once in a while, it somehow just sort of magically comes together that way, and that's cool. And this worked. This was flavors that a person who lives in New York would see and say, "Hey, I get that." And then someone who likes Japanese flavors would also say, "Hey, I get that." And for my concept of my business, that's like a home run. Because it really works, and I didn't do it to be cute. I did it because I think it tastes good.
Awesome.
And I hate cute cooking, so that's my salmon donburi.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks everybody. Anne.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Thank you, Ivan, William, and Jehangir, for a really great session. We are now going to the marketplace. There will be book signings at the entrance as usual, and Ivan will be signing his cookbook, among other people. We are coming back here at 2 o'clock, and you really don't want to miss that. We have a super special dessert session for you. There will be lots of desserts to eat. We're finishing with a dessert and whiskey tasting, and other surprises. And let's not forget the raffle to win a packet of 3 registrations to our conferences. So please come back after lunch. Enjoy this in the meantime, and we will be back here at 2 o'clock.
Now I'm going to show you how to make this colorful, delicious, Asian-inspired flatbread using Rich's flatbread. Our ingredients for this dish are hoisin sauce, blanched asparagus spears, sautéed shiitake mushrooms, fresh scallions, pickled red onions, fromage blanc, and mâche dressed with Asian vinaigrette. Let's get started here. We'll take our hoisin sauce and we'll spread that on our flatbread. Next, we'll add our asparagus spears. Sauteed shiitake mushrooms. Our fresh scallions. Pickled red onions. And finally, our fromage blanc. Now we'll bake our flatbread in the oven until our toppings are hot and our cheese is melted, probably about 2 minutes at 500 degrees. Now we're going to make our salad for our flatbread. We take fresh mâche, Asian vinaigrette, and toss these together. When the flatbread is crispy and the cheese is melted, we'll remove our flatbread from the oven. We'll place it on a plate and top with our salad. And there we have it, Asian-inspired flatbread using Rich's flatbread.
For something sweet, we visit Seminyak on Bali's southern coast to meet up with Will Goldfarb, the American expat pastry chef and genius behind the dessert and pastries at the popular Coup d'Etat restaurant and nightclub. Chef Goldfarb introduces us to his chocolate supplier, Giuseppe Verdacci, an Italian expatriate and the proprietor of the Bean to Bar Primo Chocolate Factory. Back in his workshop, Chef Goldfarb shows us the creative dessert he calls loneliness.
So our process is simple. We're going to blend the ingredients together before we put in the Tridico. And the top of the Tridico is going to cook the gelato base together. And then when it's hot, we're going to introduce the chocolate and use a hand blender to make sure it's smooth. So I'm just going to use this to hydrate the stabilizer with a small quantity of the milk. This is our Omega blender, graciously provided from Kitchen Art and Kitchen Perfection, Indonesia. This is our gelato base, which is will powder ice cream stabilizer together with milk powder. We just do this to dissolve the hydrocolloids. Then we're going to dissolve the sugar. Lastly, the egg yolks, together with the glucose syrup. Just like when we making a recipe is dependent on the base materials, so is the process. It's important that at every point in the process, the product is perfectly smooth. So in this case, we take a lot of time to make sure our emulsion is stable at the base. We're going to strain our base before we cook it. So in case there's any grains of milk powder, they won't have any problem here while they're being cooked. And the reason we're not adding the chocolate now, and actually as you can see there's nothing left in the chinois, so that means we've emulsified everything perfectly. So we don't heat the chocolate because we want to add the chocolate after the gelato base is cooked and just emulsify it before we chill it. We don't want to cook the chocolate. We want to keep the characteristic of the raw flavor and texture. Now we're ready to go into our Bravo Tridico. This is a Tridico Executive Model 183. We use it for everything. This is a real workhorse in the pastry department, a replacement for 2 or 3 pastry cooks. You can program more than 20, infinity programs on top because you can set your own programs. And then you can, in the same machine, open the valve, process cold. So we use it for bechamel, pastry cream, ice cream, sorbet, macaroon base. It's really an unbelievable machine. Certainly the best machine that I've ever worked with. So I'm going to pour the base in the top of the machine. Okay. We're going to close the lid. And then we're going to start our hot program number 3, which cooks to 84 degrees. And the beauty of this machine is you can go work on something else and the alarm will go off when it's hot enough. That lets us know we're ready for the next step. I'm going to pre-melt the chocolate before adding it to the base using our Wolf microwave oven, which provides the best precision. It's the best way to warm chocolate, actually, is in a microwave. We use Wolf because that's our preferred choice for home and for restaurant. When you're melting chocolate, it's important never to put it in the microwave for too long or on too high heat so that it gradually melts and you don't have any risk of scorching it. You can see now the Tridico is just getting over 40 degrees. It heats very, very smoothly, but once it gets to 40, 50, 60 degrees, it accelerates because of the residual heat. The chamber is designed to heat very gradually, so there's no clumping. As you'll recall, we put the eggs straight in. And it churns on the inside, and the blades clean the side to make sure there's no waste at all. And as well, because of the lid, there's no evaporation during the cooking process like there would be if you used in a pan, not to mention a more uneven heating. Although our induction hobs from Wolf are very, very precise, this allows us to process the ice cream base with no water loss, which is really important when you're calibrating large volume gelato production. I mean, the best thing about living in Bali is being in Bali, being around all of these great products that are so central to pastry but never accessible in a fresh context. The way a chef would be able to go to a farmer's market, for the pastry world, there isn't really an alternative. You can't just go to the sugar factory or the chocolate factory or find all these tropical fruits or go to the spice plantation. But in Bali, we can do all of those things. I've always been very focused on cooking with the best ingredients from all over the world, but this is the first time I've had all of the staples of pastry literally within arm's reach or right up the street, where I can actually meet the person who grinds my chocolate, grinds my sugar, picks my spices from their backyard. So this makes, to me, I've always had a philosophy of pastry that's very personal. So this is a way of having a relationship, not just like a long distance or virtual relationship with somebody somewhere on a plantation, but these people are actually part of the community that I live and work in. Our signature dessert, the pandan bear, we use pandan, which grows everywhere here, and we infuse it in cream, a traditional panna cotta, and then we soak it in sweet wine, and we lightly smoke it over smoke from coconut shells. And in the dessert, we get fresh nutmeg, actual fruit, which I didn't even know was a fruit before I moved to Bali. But in fact, we take the fruit, we peel it, we open it, we process our own mace, we dry our own nutmeg, and then we poach the fruit like a quince with some dried rosella flowers for color. We use snake fruit, for example, to make a tatin, like a grandmother-style caramelized apples, but with a snake fruit. Mung beans, which are traditionally based for porridge, for breakfast, or for afternoon sweets here in Bali, we use instead of almond flour. So we poach them, we dry them, we grind them, and then they add a sort of crunch to our crumble that's similar to a polenta even. And then finally we use the snake fruit, the fresh filtered snake fruit juice, which has a almost uncanny resemblance to a sauterne. So we do 2 parts of fruit juice filtered through a fine mesh filter, 1 part of sweet wine, and the finish is unbelievable. The texture is incredible, super natural, and very refreshing, very tropical, but also very refined. So we're at 70 right now. We're almost there. We're just pre-melting our chocolate so that when we add it to the 84 degrees gelato base, we don't shock it. But we're also going to do that when it's not cooking anymore. So we're not going to cook the chocolate. We're just going to use the residual heat of the gelato base to melt it. I think there's something to be said for the idea of terroir, especially in winemaking. I'm sure you can appreciate that in the Napa Valley and Sonoma region. And I think something that you get in Bali is you really have a taste of the earth. So whether that's from production of rice, whether that's from production of all of the tropical fruits, the herbs, the spices, but things really taste of where they are from. And that's very, very unique, not just for cooking, but especially in pastry. To have a real richness and a terroir from the product, I think that's unique, and I certainly don't know anywhere else in the world where you could find that. Here at Jaeckle, we focus on, like the dessert you'll see today actually is on the menu at Coup d'etat right now, which is a sponge cake from cashews from Manggis, East Bali, and then cocoa yogurt from raw cacao and hung yogurt, petals from fresh mango and passion fruit from Kintamani right up in the mountains, and cocoa nibs, as well as the chocolate gelato. So you heard the beep right now, which means our base is at the right temperature. So I'm going to ask for a hand from my pastry chef, Nenga, with the hand blender. No problem. We're going to stop the program. We're going to add our half melted chocolate. Again, it helps if you're 6 feet tall. This is also a little trick when using the Tritico. We always use a hand blender to emulsify our ice cream base anyway to make sure it's super smooth before we freeze it. And looking delicious. You can see here, perfectly smooth, creamy. Now we're going to open the valve. And you can see the chocolate filling up in the bottom chamber. We make sure that everything's gone to the bottom. We reclose the valve. Perfect. And now we're going to put a cold program. We're going to use what's known as the ionic system, which is a patented system designed by Bravo, which measures the density of the gelato as it freezes to make sure it has the best texture when it comes out of the machine. And now we're going to wait a few minutes as the cooling chamber kicks in. Hopefully our water pressure is fine. And then in just a few minutes, we'll have chocolate gelato from Samsama Plantation, produced by Primo Chocolate right here in Bali, Jaeckle restaurant by Coup d'etat. Yeah, now you can see some texture. That's nice. See the elasticity? You see how it holds the ribbon? That's really nice. So to plate the dessert, we're going to do something. This is based on loneliness, the flavor of emotion. So we started with a sponge. This is a sponge that we prepare in the microwave, very, very light, from praline cashew from Chandidasa. So we make a base like a sponge cake, and then we aerate it in the cream whipper. We cook it in the microwave for about 30 seconds. And the result, as you can see, is a very, very light, big air bubble sponge cake. The next recipe, the next ingredient is a mix of Greek yogurt and cocoa syrup. So this is bitter and sour. So this is a napkin that's dry mango and passion fruit. We use a little bit of wheel powder sodium alginate to thicken it, so as it dries it stays nice and thin. The next is a soil that we make from cocoa together with egg whites and sugar. We bake like a short dough. And then we're going to prepare honey mousse. So you see that we get a mousse that's frozen on the outside and creamy on the inside. And then we can take a little scoop of the sorbet, of the ice cream, gelato, whatever you call it, put in the middle. And then we finish with the semi-frozen honey mousse. And that's our version of loneliness.
Today I'm going to show you how to make these fabulous Indian spiced lentil samosas using Rich's lavash flatbread. So let's get started. The first thing we do is we take a little bit of olive oil. We'll heat this in a pan. And we're going to add garlic, ginger, and jalapeno peppers. We're going to saute this until fragrant. And when that's ready, we're going to add scallion, diced carrots, and our lentils. We'll saute these together. And when the carrots and scallion are wilted, we'll add our water. Our tomatoes. And our spices. Here I have garam masala. I have Indian chili powder. And I have cumin. So at this point, we're going to cook these all together until the lentils are cooked, but they still hold their shape. And what I'm going to add is fresh cilantro. I'm adding this at the end so that we have the fresh flavor of cilantro mixed in with our lentils. So now we're ready to assemble our samosas. To do this, we're going to cut the lavash in half. And using one half to measure the other, we'll make our squares. Next, we're going to add about a tablespoon of lentils to each piece of lavash. Next, we'll brush the edges of lavash with water. The water helps the lavash seal. And to seal these, we're going to fold these into triangles. And I'm going to press this down with the back of my knife. Next, we'll place our samosas on a sheet pan. And to help them brown, we're going to brush these with a little bit of olive oil and garam masala mixed together. And we'll bake them in a 350-degree oven for about 10 to 15 minutes. And now we'll plate them up. We'll serve these 3 to an order. And on the side, a little bit of apricot chutney. So there we have it. We have baked Indian spice lentil samosas with apricot chutney made with Rich's flatbread lavash.
At this stop on the Indonesian island of Lombok, we visit a roadside satay stand that specializes in satay bulayak, a satay made from beef intestine and liver that's served with chili sauce.
This is to show you another diversity of Indonesian satay. As to remember, S-A-T-E-E. Bulayak is the term for this. The rice cake, in every place, the way they do is different. This one is very unique. They do it like this. And
with the satay.
Satay. Pull it. You pull.
Peels.
Yes.
Handheld rice.
Yep. The sauce is basic chili, garlic, and dried chili, paddy chili, galangal, kencur. They also use more dry spices.
So,
like cinnamon, clove, they also have it.
So is the same sauce what they pour over when they start to grill?
Sure.
So same thing, they pour over and then they serve with it as well.
Then they ground finely and saute with the coconut. They have.
So they have, I see they have 3 different kinds here. So they have a beef, and these are much smaller than the first ones we saw. Well, you can eat a lot of these.
And don't forget fermented shrimp.